Hey, good morning. It's Uncle Lou here. Yeah, that's right. It's me, Uncle Lou, live for you on LouTube today. And thanks for watching. I really appreciate it also. And two, in addition to that as well, I'm going to get right back to the team-by-team season prediction videos tomorrow. But today I have to do something that's left over from last week's videos. Of course, I was on vacation last week, out of town. I pre-recorded 3 or 4 videos that uploaded for you guys last week, some team previews and predictions. And when I got to Friday, that was the Georgia Bulldog team season prediction video. Now, if you've seen most of the prediction videos that I've done, you know I follow the same format. I spend a few minutes wrapping up last season, then I talk about the current season's team, who's gone, which new guys are coming in, which units might be better or worse than the previous year, yada, 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 and then I move on to the schedule and do a game-by-game prediction. I did that same thing with Georgia. However, when I got to the part of the video where I was discussing the 2018 team, who had left from last year, who's replacing them this year, what units I think will be better than last year, whatever. When I got to that part of the video, it was way too long. So I decided to just cut that whole thing out of that video and make a separate video just on that. So this video, the 2018 Georgia Bulldogs team preview. Shout out to everybody over on the Uncle Lou Patreon page too. I've still got some of you guys' suggestions that I have to do on the team-by-team previews, and those are going to crank right back up tomorrow. As soon as I finish all the Patreon suggestions, I'm going to go to suggestions from the YouTube comment section, Twitter, Facebook, email, things like that, and then I'll mix in some teams that I want to do to make sure I get all the ones I want to do in there. You still have, a week left this month to join the Patreon page and get in on the jersey giveaway. We give a jersey away every single month on the Patreon page. Everyone who's a member has an opportunity to win. Click the first link in the description of this video. That'll take you over to the Uncle Lou Patreon page. You can get yourself signed up. We'll be giving that jersey away for July during the first week of August. There will be no live show today either. I just got back in town from vacation last night. I'm going to skip the live show today, and we'll do it on Wednesday afternoon and Friday afternoon this week. And I'll also do the Tuesday and Thursday nighttime streams. Those are at 10 p.m. Eastern. I set a goal on the Patreon page, and I said when I hit that goal, I was going to move to 3 days a week during the day of the live call-in show that we do at 3, and we're almost at that goal. So just a few more people join up on the Patreon page, and that call-in show that's done during the week will move to 3 days. It'll be Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Then we'll set another goal, and if we hit that, I'll go to 5 days a week doing that call-in show for you guys during the day at 3 p.m. Eastern. Again, just click the first link if you need more information on that. Anyway, let's get right into today's video. Like I mentioned, this introduction is way too long already, but let's get right into it. The 2018 Georgia Bulldogs team preview. Let's go!
Stop mistreating Uncle Lou!
Okay, let's start with the obvious, right? Who's gone from last season? Nick Chubb, Sony Michel, Quan Smith on the defensive side, and Javon Wims at wide receiver. Now, I don't really need to explain why losing those 4 players is a big deal. Nick Chubb and Sony Michel obviously were first-round picks in the draft. Where'd they go? Chubb went top 10 or so to the Browns, and who else? Sony Michel went late in the first round to the Patriots. Isaiah Wynn also gone to the NFL off the offensive line. I don't need to talk about why losing Chubb and Michel is a big deal. They're one of the greatest running back duos in the history of college football. Both guys 4-year players at UGA. Amazing numbers put up. Leaders of the team last year, especially on the offensive side. You can't underestimate the role they played last year from a leadership perspective, especially given the fact that we started a first-year starter at quarterback again for the 4th year in a row. If you go through Sony Michel and Nick Chubb's career at Georgia, they had a different quarterback every single year they were there. They had Hudson Mason when they were freshmen, Grayson Lambert their sophomore year, Jacob Eason their junior year, and of course Jake Fromm their senior year. So that leadership they provided to last year's team is going to be missed, and it's going to be hard to replace that on the offensive side of the ball. A lot of our stars over there now are younger guys. Now, I think it helps, obviously, to have a returning quarterback, finally, that can take the reins on offense, Jake Fromm, and I'll talk more about him in a second. Quan Smith over on the defensive side, let's talk about him. Again, obvious why it's going to be a problem replacing that guy, or a problem to lose a guy like Quan Smith. He's a once-a-decade player, Butkus Award winner, one of the best defensive players in America last year, arguably the best linebacker in college football last year. Another high draft pick. Where did he go? Chicago Bears, is that right? I believe that's right. I could be wrong, and 100 people will be happy to tell me all about it in the comments section. But anyway, again, a guy that you're just not going to replace. It doesn't really matter the talent that we've recruited. It doesn't really matter the guys that are behind him and their potential and how highly rated or recruited they were. We've got two guys with experience stepping in at the inside linebacker position this year. Neither one of them are Quan Smith. Again, I'm just stating the obvious here. Javon Wims at the wide receiver position, another big loss for Georgia. Obviously, not quite as talented or on an elite level as the previous three players that I named, Chubb, Michelle, and Roquan, but still a big part of Georgia's offense last year, our big play threat, kind of our stretch the field, go route guy sort of last year. Now, a lot of the balls that Javon Wims caught last year are balls really that I would consider sort of 50-50 balls. He was very athletic, he was tall, he was able to out-jump a lot of defensive backs. It wasn't necessarily a case of Jake Fromm making perfect, pinpoint, accurate passes time after time after time to Javon Wims. Not that Fromm isn't accurate, but and this isn't an excuse I'm making just because we're losing Wims, and I'm trying to act like it's not a big deal. If you watched my videos from last year, I talked about this all last year when people were bragging about Fromm to Wims, and I was like, look, a lot of these balls, it almost looks like Fromm's just closing his eyes, throwing the ball up in the air, and Wims is jumping up and making a play. Still going to be an issue replacing him. Now, he got hurt in the national title game and was limited, and Ridley really stepped up, Ridley. Of the guys I've named so far, I'm less concerned about replacing a Javon Wims at wide receiver than I am about replacing a Roquan Smith at inside linebacker, or obviously a Chubb and Michelle at running back. We've got plenty of wide receivers, in my opinion. I think this year's wide receiver core at Georgia will be the best that it's been since back to the A.J. Green days. We're loaded with talent. A lot of it is unproven. We'll see how they can perform this year. We're okay at the starter position on wide receiver. Of course, we'll have Ridley most likely on the outside. We'll have Godwin on the outside, Terry Godwin, 4-year starter. And of course, Mecole Hardman playing the slot. So three guys with plenty of experience. Godwin and Mecole started almost every single game last year. Ridley played in almost every single game last year. He was sort of a rotating guy with Wims. And like I said, Ridley, if you watch the national championship game, looked like he was the best wide receiver on the field, even better than his older brother, Calvin, over at Alabama. Now, of course, Alabama fans want to say, well, yeah, but that's just one game. Of course, when you remind them that Tua only looked really, really great in one half of one game, they don't see it's a different story to them then. But anyway, I digress. I don't want to get into pointing out the idiocy of Gump fans. Not in this video. Got all season to do that. But point is, I'm not too concerned about losing Javon Wims, especially in comparison to losing Roquan and Chubb and Michelle. Isaiah Wynn on the offensive line, we lose him. He's been an anchor on the offensive line during a period of time where Georgia's offensive line really struggled. We've had some of the worst offensive lines I can remember at UGA over the last few years. Now, last year they played a lot better. And of course, running backs like Chubb and Michelle tend to make any offensive line look a little bit better than they actually are. The good news, if you're a Georgia fan, we have finally recruited over the last couple of years at an elite level on the offensive line, and those guys are going to come into their own this year. Names like Andrew Thomas, Isaiah Wilson, of course, Ben Cleveland. We've got Lamont Gaillard returning, most likely at center. Not as elite as the other guys I named, but a ton of experience there. This will be his third year starting. So Georgia has the potential to have an offensive line better than anything we've seen at UGA in at least the last 5 to 10 years. I'm very excited about the offensive line, and because of that, I think that is going to soften the blow of losing elite running backs like Chubb and Michel. And obviously, we're not hurting at the running back position in terms of talent and depth. Everyone knows, DeAndre Swift played a lot last year as sort of the third down or third back to come in behind Chubb and Michel. Got a lot of carries as a true freshman. Very exciting player on a lot of people's short list for the Heisman this year. If you put together a top 10 list or whatever, you'll find DeAndre Swift's name on a lot of those lists. He'll start the season out as RB1 without a doubt. Beyond that, we've got some talent. It's a little bit up in the air as far as the rotation and how that's going to work out. Two very highly recruited freshmen incoming, of course, #1 running back in America, Zamir, Zeus White, committed to Georgia out of North Carolina, out of a high school in North Carolina. He did blow his knee out in November of last year. Everything I've heard, everything I've read, everything everyone seems to be telling me is that he's ahead of pace in terms of his recovery. His knee injury, I don't ever want to minimalize any injury at all. Anytime you blow something out in your knee, it's a serious injury. But compared to some of the other knee injuries that we've seen Georgia running backs suffer, most notably Nick Chubb, this injury appears to be lower on the scale in terms of seriousness. Again, not trying to minimize the injury, just pointing out the fact that there are varying degrees of seriousness when it comes to knee injuries. And the general consensus is that Zamir White's knee injury was not as bad as some of the others we've seen. It wouldn't surprise me at all to see him get some playing time early in the season. How early, that's yet to be determined. And I don't expect Kirby Smart to be making a whole lot of announcements about that. He tends to keep that stuff in-house, close to the vest, doesn't like to advertise that kind of stuff as far as injuries and timetables and things like that. So it's going to be a wait-and-see approach on him. Obviously, he's an elite running back, one of the best high school running backs I've ever seen. It wouldn't surprise me at all when he does get healthy if he's immediately one of the best 10 running backs in America. He's that good. We also bring in James Cook, another highly recruited running back. He was the 4th or 5th best running back coming out of high school last year. So we have him too. And of course, Harrion and Holyfield return as well. Now, these are sort of like career backup type guys. I don't picture either one of these guys ever being elite or having any sort of all-pro NFL career or anything like that, but that's not to diminish their importance to UGA. You need depth at the running back position in college football, especially in the SEC. If you don't believe me, just ask Auburn. They get one running back injured a year and they can't get a first down and they lose to one-arm Menzies at Central Florida. Just the way it is. So Georgia not hurting at the running back position. Now, can those guys I named come in and do what a Chubb and Michel did last year? Well, it depends. In terms of leadership, no. You're not going to replace that senior leadership that those two had last year. Those two carried the team from the Mark Richt era to the Kirby Smart era. 4 different quarterbacks, like I mentioned while they were there. They were serious, big-time leaders. They played, they did it the right way, they stayed out of trouble. Those are the type of guys you want on your team. Talent-wise, we're, like I said, no issues at running back as far as I'm concerned. Talent-wise, the issues are going to be leadership and seeing some of these guys do it on Saturday, Zamir and James Cook. But with the offensive line being, like I said, in my opinion, one of the best we've had in years and it could be the best in the SEC this year, I think it's possible that we see similar rushing numbers from Georgia this season that we saw last season. Now, you might not have 2 running backs getting 12, 13, 1,400 yards and 30-something touchdowns, whatever it was, like we saw last year with Chubb and Michel. But I think the combination of DeAndre Swift, James Cook, Zamir White, Harrion, and Holyfield can combine for similar overall numbers, similar yards per carry, and even similar touchdowns. The even better news, if you're a Georgia fan, is with the passing game. I mentioned losing Wims. That is really not a big deal, Georgia fans. It's really not. We are loaded at the wide receiver position with players that have never even played yet. I'm talking about Matt Landers, Kyrus Jackson, Jeremiah Holloman, just to name 2 or 3. And those aren't even the starters. Ridley, Miko, Godwin. We could have one of the best. There are wide receivers in the SEC, for sure, better than anybody that Georgia has at wide receiver. I'm not trying to claim that Georgia has the best wide receiver or anything like that in the SEC, but as a group, Georgia is really, really good at the wide receiver position right now. Terry Godwin, one of the best possession receivers in America. Not just college football. The guy's got hands like glue. He runs great routes. He does have trouble separating from time to time from elite coverage. And he's a little short for what I would prefer. He's just under 6 feet tall. But like I said, he's a great possession receiver. On the outside, you've got Ridley. He can stretch the field, replace what we lost with Wims, Kyrus Jackson, an exciting young guy coming in, and of course Matt Lanners and Jeremiah Holloman, who came in last year's class 2017, didn't play all that much last year, but looking to make their way into the rotation this year. These are guys that are all 6 foot plus, typical, prototypical wide receivers. So the wide receiver position is going to be great at the University of Georgia for the next couple of years. Tight ends, Isaac Nauta. The guy disappeared last year. Was it his fault? No. Play calling and scheme. That's what it was. Again, we had a below average offensive line last year with a first-year starting quarterback. Tight ends oftentimes didn't even go out for routes on passing plays. They stayed in to help block a lot of the times. Jake Fromm did not throw over the middle a lot last year, and I'm going to talk about Jake Fromm more towards the end here. We'll get to that at some point. But Jake Fromm didn't throw over the middle a whole lot last year. Of course, the deep balls to Wims, and one of the best sideline route throwers in all of college football last year. That's not my opinion. Stats back that up. You hear the announcers talk about it all the time. He throws one of the best 15 to 20-yard out routes in all of college football, back shoulder fades, things like that. That's his bread and butter. I'm hoping that this year he will work on his over-the-middle game because our tight ends are elite. Isaac Nauta basically disappeared last year, and still, if you look on a list of draftable tight ends in college football this year, Isaac Nauta is considered one of the top 5 NFL tight ends in college football this year. So that just goes to show how good he is. Georgia basically didn't use him at all last year, and he's still considered by people that know way more than me or you do to be an elite NFL caliber tight end, and I'm hoping to get him back involved in the offensive game plan this year. He's a great red zone target. He's a great down the middle target. Again, great hands, runs good routes, can block. I mean, he gives you everything you want from a tight end. Jake Fromm at the quarterback position and Justin Fields. Eason transfers, right, to Washington. So we're pretty much left with Fromm and Fields as our 2 scholarship quarterbacks at this point. This has been debated by Georgia fans and non-Georgia fans nonstop for the last 6 months, really since Justin Fields signed. Yes, there are Georgia fans, a lot of them, who want to see Justin Fields start game 1. They're of the opinion that Jake Fromm is nothing but a game manager, can't put the team on his shoulders, can't throw you to a win, can't run around, things like this. They think you need a run-around quarterback to beat a team like Alabama. There's all sorts of reasons that people want Justin Fields to start. I'm not doing this video to bash one or the other. Look, Jake Fromm is starting. I mean, that's what it is. No one was harder on Jake Fromm last year than I was. I was fair with Jake Fromm. When Jake Fromm had a great game, I was the first one to come out and say it, okay? When Jake Fromm didn't look so good in the Notre Dame game and bordered on terrible in the Tennessee game, I was the first one to come out and say that too. But any objective person who watched Georgia's season last year and watched Fromm from week 1 to the national championship game and tries to tell me they did not see obvious progression from week 1 to the end of the season is either willfully blind or ignorant. Those are the only 2 options. I mean, this guy was throwing 10, 11 passes a game the first half of the season. The last 3 or 4 games of the season, he was throwing between 25 and 35 passes a game. So you could see that the coaching staff was really starting to open things up for Fromm down the stretch last year. The playbook opened up for him. He started to feel more comfortable. The coaches felt more comfortable putting the ball in his hands. He's excellent at getting Georgia out of bad plays and into good plays. And that's something that's hard to categorize with a stat or something like that. But I loved Eason. I was Team Eason for a long time. You go back and watch Eason in 2016, he rarely changed the play at the line of scrimmage. I don't know if he didn't know what he was looking at in terms of what the defense was doing. I don't know if the coaches told him not to. I don't know. But you didn't see that with Eason. You saw it all the time with Fromm. And it's as simple as changing from a run to the right to a run to the left. It doesn't have to be changing out of a run to a pass or out of a pass to a run. I mean, obviously he did that too. But the progress that Jake Fromm showed from the beginning of last year to the end is undeniable, and he is going to be the starting quarterback this year for the entire season, barring one of 2 things. Number 1, obviously, injury. That's what happened to Eason last year, right? Anybody can get injured on any play. Obviously, Fromm gets hurt, Justin Fields is going to be the guy, right? The only other scenario I see in which Fields becomes the starting quarterback at the University of Georgia is a terrible scenario if you're a University of Georgia fan. If Georgia somehow drops multiple games in the first half of the season this year, I guess it's possible. If you can watch those games and it's clear that Fromm is not performing at a high level and we've lost a couple of games, I could see maybe making a change then, although I don't see that happening. Not that Georgia couldn't drop a couple of games. Anything's possible when you got to line up and play. I just find it hard to believe that Fromm's not going to be a good quarterback this year. Last year, 65%, 2,600 yards, 3.5 to 1 touchdown to interception ratio, 24 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. I mean, the guy, was he elite? Did he throw for 300 a game? No. But just like you guys like to remind me all the time, we had 2 of the best running backs in college football last year, Chubb and Michelle. Why? He didn't need to throw for 300 yards a game. He did what he needed to do, and then some, especially down the stretch. He's the starting quarterback, period. With that being said, Justin Fields ain't riding the bench for 4 quarters, all 12 games of the season. I don't see that happening either. This is totally different than last year's argument about Fromm and Eason. Fromm and Eason are the same quarterback. One's just taller, and one's a little bit more mobile. Eason, way taller, way stronger arm. Fromm, shorter, a little bit more mobile, a little bit more accurate and consistent. But they're both pocket passers. I get it that Fromm can scramble a little. I get it that Fromm can run the zone read and pull the ball out of the running back's belly and take it around the side. We saw him do it, I don't know, half a dozen times or so last year. I get it. He can do that. Easton couldn't. But Fromm is not a dual threat quarterback. Justin Fields is. It makes absolutely no sense to rotate in and out pocket passing quarterbacks. There would be no scenario where Jake Fromm would play 3 or 4 series and then Eason would come in for a series. I mean, that just wouldn't make any sense, right? You're running the same plays. The offense is the same no matter which one of those 2 quarterbacks is in. Sure, one may perform better than the other, but one doesn't give you a skill set that the other one doesn't. That's not the case with Fields. Fields gives you a completely different skill set than what Jake Fromm does. He can run around. He can make things happen. You can design quarterback runs for Justin Fields. You can bootleg him and get him out of the pocket, right? Those are things you're typically not going to see happen with Jake Fromm. I mean, you're just not. And on top of that, Justin Fields can throw the ball. He's an actual dual threat quarterback. One of my biggest pet peeves in the world, you guys know, you've heard me say this 100 times, is these quote unquote dual threat quarterbacks who aren't really dual threat. They're single threat. They can run, but they can't throw. Jalen Hurts, that's you. About to get carried away, but I didn't. Anyway, the point is, Fields is going to come in the game. I don't know if it's going to be like determined ahead of time. Okay, Fields is playing the 4th series. I don't know if it's going to be determined like, okay, Fields is going to play some red zone. I don't know how it's going to work, but Fields is going to play, and it's going to be a nightmare for opposing defensive coordinators. We play Austin Peay week 1. There's no reason to put Justin Fields out there, right? We're going to win 40-0. You right there. Hey, you. Yeah, you. You could play quarterback week 1 for University of Georgia. We're still going to beat Austin Peay by whatever we want to 7 or whatever. I mean, we're going to kill them no matter what. So why play Fields, right? Well, you're going to see Justin Fields play in week 1 against Austin Peay, in my opinion, and not just 4th quarter when we're up 30 or 40 points or whatever it is. I think you're going to see Justin Fields in the 1st quarter against Austin Peay, whether it's for 1 play or 1 series or 1 drive or whatever it is. I think you're going to see it. Why? It's going to give Will Muschamp nightmares for week 2. That's reason enough to do it, in my opinion. Will Muschamp is an elite defensive mind. Carolina believes they have a legitimate chance to beat the University of Georgia this year. It's the first SEC game. You do not want to fall behind in your first SEC game with a loss. You don't want that. You put Fields out there. You let him make a few plays in the 1st and 2nd quarter, whatever. That's twice as many things as Will Muschamp has to prepare for the following week when we have to go to Columbia and play. And that's going to be a theme this season, I think. I think you're going to see Fields play in every game early and often. This is Fromm's team. Fromm is the starter. Fromm is QB1. Fromm has earned it. But Fields is too good and provides you with a totally different set of skills to just leave him on the bench. I do think he will play. All right, let's move to the defense. Quan Smith. We're not replacing him, period. End of story. Any Georgia fan who tries to come on anywhere, whether it's the comment section here or Facebook or Twitter or knocking on their neighbor's door and trying to convince them that the earth is flat, you're better off convincing somebody that the earth is flat than you are convincing me that we've got a replacement for Quan Smith. We don't. Now, we've got 2 guys with plenty of experience. Natrez Patrick. Now, of course, everybody knows this guy has trouble with the law, a couple of marijuana issues. Hopefully that's straightened out because he's a senior. He's our most experienced guy at inside linebacker, and Georgia's going to rely on him a lot this year. The problem there is I'm not sure you can count on this guy or rely on this guy as a leader. And that's really what you want from the inside linebacker position. And I mean, these guys are considered sort of the quarterback of the defense, right? They call the plays, make sure everybody's lined up right, whatever. I'm not sure if you can count on somebody like a Natrez from a leadership perspective. So who's next to him? Most likely Monty Rice. Now, he played a lot last year, especially when Natrez was out, and he did okay. He was out of position a couple of times, too. So, what was he, a freshman last year? Anyway, my best guess right now, you're going to see Natrez, Patrick, and Monty Rice starting at the 2 inside linebacker positions. Now, we've got some other guys that can fill in. Nate McBride is a popular name, although I'm not too sure. I'm not going to get into that. People get too mad talk about Nate McBride. Anyway, so do I think we're going to be terrible at the inside linebacker position? No. We've got a lot of talent on the roster at inside linebacker position. But we're not replacing Quan Smith. You're going to have to come up with some sort of, committee approach or whatever to even come close to the numbers that Quan Smith put up last year. And the leadership, I'm more confident in replacing the leadership on the offensive side of the ball that's left from losing Chubb and Michelle, because I'm a believer in Fromm. Quarterback is a natural leader. Anyway, we finally got a returning quarterback for the first time in 4 years. I think the offense will be okay, and I think Fromm can lead the offense from a leadership perspective. I don't see any issues there. Defense, not so much the case. I'm a little concerned about the leadership on the defensive side of the ball. We've got a returning talent on the defensive line, but again, it's usually the inside linebacker position that you look to, and we just don't have somebody that you could consider, quote-unquote, the leader of the defense, in my opinion, at the inside linebacker position. Now, on the back end, secondary, Georgia's going to have one of the best secondaries in America. Top 5 without question. We've got one of the best, if not the best, cover corner in the SEC in Deandre Baker. He's going to pretty much lock down one side of the field or one team's receiver, depending on what Georgia tends to do. He tended to play mostly on just one side during the season. In the national title game, he did shadow Calvin Ridley and completely shut him down. Well, not completely. I think he did get one there in the second half. But, I mean, he mostly took Calvin Ridley out of the game, and I think you'll see a lot of that from Deandre Baker this year. Week 2, we play Carolina. I'll be interested to see if they take Baker and shadow Deebo Samuel with him, or if they just leave Baker on the one side. We'll see. The other cornerback, if you're going to look for a weak spot on Georgia's secondary, it's going to be the corner opposite Deandre Baker. We've got some talent over there. It's not like we're terrible. It's going to be an upgrade from last year for sure, and I'm not even going to get into the whole Dom Sanders, Malcolm Parrish thing. I've been down that. I'm just not even going to go there. The national title game was 7 months ago. It is what it is. Those two guys are gone, Dom Sanders and Malcolm Parrish. So you got some new guys in there, but they have playing time, right? Not to mention incoming freshman, top-rated cornerback out of last year's class from right down there in Martin Rick's backyard in Miami, Tyson Campbell. If this guy can get up to speed, which I'm not going to lie, I'm hoping he is, he'll be playing eventually at some point this season. If it's not week 1, middle of the season, he's way too good. If he can get the playbook down, do what he needs to do mentally, he's got all the physical tools, period. He's the most highly rated cornerback that Georgia has signed in about 10 years, and it wouldn't surprise me at all to see him get out there and play a lot, which you don't see freshmen doing a whole lot on Kirby Smart defenses. I think with Tyson Campbell that could change. Otis Reese, another true freshman to keep an eye on. This guy's sort of a hybrid player, safety, linebacker. He can probably play 2 or 3 different positions, and he's an absolute monster. This was a guy that was committed to Michigan for a long time, flipped at the end near signing day, ended up signing with Georgia. He was like our 10th or 11th highest rated player in last year's class. He would have been Michigan's highest rated player. So again, shows you how good of a class we signed last year. Richard Lacount will make his debut as a starter this year for the University of Georgia at safety, in my opinion. This guy's a headhunter. I don't hope this happens, but I'm going to go ahead and predict it. He's probably going to get tossed from a game or 2. This guy, when the ball is in the air, this guy is seek and destroy. He's a laser-guided missile, and I'll be surprised, and I'm sure they have tried to coach this out of him, but it's going to surprise me if this guy doesn't get the yank in at least 1 or 2 games this year from practically taking some poor receiver's head off. This guy is an absolute animal. Of course, we get J.R. Reed back as well, one of the stars of last year's back end. So our back end is going to be, I've got no real worries or concerns about our back end this year, which has not been the case on Georgia's defense going into the last 3 or 4 seasons. Defensive line, we don't have the depth that we've had in years past. We just don't. Anybody tells you they do, that we do, they're lying. And we haven't recruited that position very well over the last couple of years either. So I'm even more concerned about the defensive line position heading into 2019 and 2020 than I am heading into this year. The starters are elite and will be great. Tyler Clark, David Marshall, Ledbetter. I mean, these are going to be household names by the end of the season. But we don't have the experience depth behind them that we've had the last couple of years. So I think the starters on our defensive line, talent-wise, best starting defensive line we've had at Georgia in a while. Depth-wise, not up to par. I also think it's going to be an issue replacing nose tackle John Atkins. We don't really have another guy like that we can plug in. We're going to put somebody there. I don't think he's going to be as effective as John Atkins. Well, this guy ate up blocks like his life depended on it. Sometimes 2-3 blockers a play. He took care of. And really, that was a big part of Roquan's success last year. And things like that, they never get the credit they deserve, because the stats aren't there when you're taking up 2 or 3 blockers to free up the inside linebacker so he can have 120 tackles or whatever. But that's a lot of what happened last year with Roquan and Atkins. We're going to miss him in the middle, but overall, defensive line will be fine. Outside linebackers, elite. Wouldn't surprise me at all if you see Georgia double their sack numbers from last year. Just based on play from the outside linebackers alone. We lose Lorenzo Carter. Lorenzo Carter came in as a 5-star. Now this guy, this is one of those people, you look at Lorenzo Carter, and it looks like he was built in a lab to play football. I mean, he's exactly what you want. Height, weight, speed, wingspan, ability, vertical leap. I mean, all that stuff through the roof. To me, he never really reached his potential, to me. This is a good example of a 5-star never really reaching his potential. A lot of times you get a sort of an unknown 3-star or a low-rated 4-star, and they seem to come out of nowhere, play to the absolute limits of their ability. You felt like you never really got everything Lorenzo Carter had to offer, in my opinion. Now, I think he could be a stud in the NFL if he gets the right coaching, and they can get him motivated and things like that. He's going to be an absolute beast because, like I said, he's built like a prototypical NFL end or outside linebacker. But I like what we have coming back on the outside. You got, Deandre Walker, right, on one side, Walter Grant on the other. Not quite as big, strong, and fast as Lorenzo Carter, but these guys are absolute animals. They can get after the quarterback. They're going to be sack machines this year, in my opinion. They can chase plays down from the backside. These guys are going to be really, really great. So to sort of sum up and give you my prediction or whatever on how the team will do stat-wise compared to last year. People think I'm crazy. I think Georgia can have a better offense in 2018 than they had in 2017. I think it'll be way more balanced. Last year, we were, 65% run, 70% run sometimes, 25, 30, 35% pass. I think that'll be a lot closer to 50-50 this year. I think Fromm will exceed 3,000 yards passing or come very, very close this year. Running backs, yardage-wise, and even more importantly, yards per carry-wise, I think we'll stay very close to what we saw last year. You're going to see Georgia at the 6.5, 7 yard per carry mark. I have no doubt in my mind. Our offensive line is elite, going to be one of the best in the SEC, and good luck to opposing defenses trying to get through that wall. So offensively, I think we're going to be better than last year in terms of points per game. Rushing numbers may be down a little. I think the passing numbers will be a lot better. On defense, I don't think we're going to be as good as last year, but I don't think we're going to fall off the map either. Georgia was widely considered to be a top 5 defense last year. I don't think we'll be a top 5 defense this year. Too young. Now, talent, I think Georgia's defense this year is more talented and has higher ceilings and more potential than last year's defense. Unfortunately, I just don't feel like the numbers are going to reflect that this year for a variety of reasons. I don't think Georgia finishes with a top 5 defense last year, but they should be still top 10 or top 15. That's pretty much it, right? Went through everything there, offense and defense. I expect a big year from Georgia. Loaded on both sides of the ball with 5 stars and highly rated 4 stars. Picture this on offense, okay? 5-star Jake Fromm, 5-star Terry Godwin, 5-star Isaac Nauta, 5-star DeAndre Swift, 5-star Zamir White, 3 5-stars on the offensive line, 5-star Mecole Hardman in the slot. I mean, it's bordering on unfair. Georgia could potentially line up 8 5-stars on its starting lineup on offense. Unbelievable. By far, right now, the most talented times the University of Georgia has ever enjoyed in terms of overall talent on the roster from top to bottom. Not even close, in my opinion. Anyway, that's it. Per usual, this video way too long. If you made it this far, you're a scholar and a gentleman. And I'll see you very soon. Again, the team-by-team previews will resume tomorrow. Have a great morning.
Stop mistreating Uncle Lou!